Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
And I'm CJ.
and it
And
is
boy,
when,
did we have a snowstorm.
and it's Wednesday in the Rib, and we had quite. And everybody, be careful out there today. It's really icy. A lot of black ice around, and it's really cold. And I don't think it's going to go away.
Nope.
You may see a little bit because of the sun being out, but I think that most of it, you better be careful when you get out there. I know that my driveway was like a sheet of ice. I got to rock salt it, and even going into my backyard, it was because I cleaned it up yesterday with my snow blower and shoveled and snowblower, and I cleaned it all up. But now the blacktop is all it's just black ice. So be careful out there if you go out today. It's cold. And just be careful when you're walking around on sidewalks and stuff like that. So, or anything. So that's something you gotta really do.
And you know, rock salt and ice melter is effective, but when it's this cold, what happens is it melts and then refreezes.
And it refreezes, yeah. But you gotta put it down.
You
That's
have to.
yeah. You gotta put it down anyway, and that's the problem. You gotta it's gonna melt it now, and then later on it's gonna refreeze. So
Exactly.
when it gets really really cold, and then but so hopefully tomorrow. I think tomorrow they said it's gonna be in the high 30s.
High 30s, low 40s. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we'll get maybe it won't be quite as bad. So just be careful out there. That's all. And while we're on snowstorms, I think you got a picture, don't you, CJ?
Yes, I do.
Don't we have a picture? And what does that say? Look at what the
Look what the
city
city did.
they did. They just don't care. And the lady, it's
It's
handicapped.
handicapped.
So it's handicapped. Well, then again, shut up, CJ. You underrate things.
That's right.
You're an underrater. You're an underrater. We're the purveyors of misinformation. Well, guess what? We don't purvey misinformation. If it's an opinion, it's an opinion, and the individual who made that accusation is the one that is spreading misinformation. When we give information, we give you the source of the information, unlike the individual. He has a right to think Fall River is the most underrated city in New England. Not the best, but the most underrated. Well, I don't know if we're underrated. But then again, ratings are based on opinions. And let's look at the opinions. Who has more opinions in their favor? Us, or people who think this place is one of the better cities in New England, not only just Massachusetts, but in New England, according to this individual. Let's see ratings. We were rated number one in crime a couple of years in a row, in the top five most of the years. We are rated 336 out of 351 cities and towns in education. We are rated in the top five in poverty level by the United States Census Bureau in this state. We're in the top five in per capita and household incomes, not in the top five, but in the lowest five. So if you want to think a city that's in this kind of condition is going to attract other people, you're crazy. Listen, let me make it perfectly clear. I like the people of Fall River. I like Fall River. Matter of fact, I like the people of Fall River because they're real for the most part, except the Richie Riches who live in their Nancy Pelosi like environment up in the Highlands. Because, and again, Fall River, it's not our opinion, it's everybody's opinion. Everybody in the state looks at Fall River and says, well, if they ever gave the Massachusetts an enema, the left cheek would be Fall River and the right cheek would be New Bedford. They know exactly where to stick the tube. It's been memorialized in movies. A movie made in the 50s or 60s called Donovan's Reef they had a character played by Lee Marvin whose name was Gil Hooley, and he was from Fall River. And John Wayne, who was the star of that movie, introduced him to a Bostonian and said, "Oh, here's another Massachusetts resident, Mr. Gilhooly of the Fall River Gilhooleys." And her response was, I don't know anyone from Fall River, because Gilhooly was a drunk and all he ever did in the movie was drink and fight. In The Friends of Eddie Coyle, Fall River was looked at a place where the criminals came to hide. And on an ESPN documentary, opened up with Fall River's a place where people punch first and ask questions later. And you know something? I don't care. I like that. I like places where people, if you give them, where you act not like a wokey, where you deal with your differences man to man. But to say this city is one of the most underrated cities and it doesn't need help, you're delusionary. You're delusionary. Okay? So that I'm not even going to discuss it anymore, because anybody that comes up with that stuff, you're a typical Fall River excuse maker. Everybody hates us. They're all lying. Fall River is Xanadu. It's beautiful. I don't know what they're talking about. There's no crime. We got a great educational system. We plow snow the right way. You know, when you're like that, you're a typical wokey, because what you do is nobody can call you the wrong pronoun, but you can accuse anybody that gives facts that you don't like of passing disinformation. Remember, the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. All the truths about COVID was disinformation. Now they're proving they're having early cancers showing up from people who took these things. Cancers in young people, 20s and 30s, getting cancers that you shouldn't get till you're well into your 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. That's why you can't open their studies for 75 years. You still haven't figured out, Mr. Delusionary, that politicians lie. You're drinking the Kool-Aid, enjoy it. But it's not my flavor, because I don't like shit-flavored Kool-Aid. And with that, CJ, I'll turn it back to you.
Gilhooly of the Fall River Gilhoolies. I like that movie. That was definitely a good movie.
It was a great movie. I really enjoyed that movie. It was one of the typical old that's one of my, and The Friends of Eddie Coyle was a really good movie too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
really good movie.
Yeah.
And Robert Mitchum played in that one. There were some great old actors in those movies.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
every
definitely.
once in a while you'll see. So all you Fall Riverites who want to see this, if you see it on the movie channel, the Turner Network that plays a lot of the old movies, and once in a while you see it. If you see Donovan's Reef, and it's not played often, but it is, please watch it. You'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy watching Fall River be mentioned. You know,
That's it.
But with that snow removal picture. But let's get into the school department.
Well, before we get there, I want to. I'm not justifying this, okay? Because I think that the snow plow drivers, when they're putting snow up against, right in front of my house, there's a car that's blocked in the back because that snow is pushed up right up against the bumper, and it's frozen there now because nobody got out there to clean it. The excuse that we're given all the time is we got to put the snow somewhere, and we don't have any place to put it. And one of the big problems I had with this is, number one, how are they supposed to know that woman is handicapped? Okay, was there a handicap placard in the window? If there was, then they're guilty. There's no question about it. They're guilty of putting snow where it shouldn't be. But I'm not trying to justify it. I'm just trying to say we've got to find a way for these drivers to realize that they inconvenience people. Like when they go down your street 3 times, and 3 times after you've shoveled 3 times, they plow your driveway in again. They do it all the time. And I'm told, where are we supposed to put the snow? Well, don't put it in my driveway. And that's where the problems happen. And again, we had a parking ban in effect, and nobody in my neighborhood was tagged, but nobody in my neighborhood was also paying attention to the parking ban. They should have been tagged and towed. But again, they say we don't have any parking spaces. How are we supposed to park? There's no parking up here. There used to be when the church was there, because the church would let you park in their parking lot during the parking ban, because usually the parking ban lasts 12 to 24 hours, and it never really affected the church that much, so they let you park there. But we don't have any parking lots around here. The nearest one we have is down on Columbia Street. So where are people supposed to park? These are things that we have to look at. Especially when you have a zoning board that turns around and approves the construction of new buildings and new market rate housing, and they waive parking requirements. 2 parking spaces per unit. That's what the law says. 2 parking spaces per unit. But the zoning board doesn't see the problem out here in the winter. They don't see the problem out here at all. How soon they forget the fire in your neighborhood, Chip, where the fire apparatus couldn't get down the street because people were parked on both sides of the street in a snowstorm, and the firefighters were working in ice. They were covered in ice. And you're familiar with that because you used to be a firefighter and you used to work in that type of conditions. And this is why we have the problems we have with parking in Fall River during snowstorms. It's the people that cause the problem, and it's the zoning board of appeal that makes it worse.
No, you're right, CJ, and I think you lived in Minnesota where they get
That's
a
right.
hell of a lot more snow than we do, and they handled it better. My
Yes, they
son
do.
went to college out in Iowa. They get a ton of snow, but I went out to visit him and I saw them handle snow. You got to get it off. Look, and as you said, you're right. They don't know that person's handy. Well, they may have had a handicap. That may have been a handicap spot. We do have some of those on the street. It may have been marked. But regardless of that, they plow other people in.
That's
How
right.
about people, how about 60 and 70-year-old people who were shoveling snow, and now they're going to have to shovel their driveway out 3 times in a row, and this heavy ice, heavy snow, frozen snow the next day, and all the work they have to do? Listen, there's got to be a way to get this snow. I know in some areas they actually plow snow to a designated area, put it in a truck, and get rid of it. They do that in some communities. They
They
actually
do that
get
in
rid of the
Minnesota.
snow.
They do that in
Yeah,
Minnesota.
that's why I mentioned Minnesota, because
Yep.
in Iowa they did fundamentally the same thing. They'd plow the things down, and then they'd have trucks, and they'd put the thing on trucks and truck it to an area. But then that would make, yeah, and these market rate housings are going to exacerbate this issue. So, listen, it's nuts. But again, remember, we're just underrating everything. We're not speaking facts here. We're just underrating things. But the reality is, listen, there's a better way to do this stuff, and they don't care. I mean, I've had times where I had to shovel my driveway 5 or 6 times. And then finally I figured I was safe because it was dark. And then they sent the plow down my street at 2 o'clock in the morning to plow my driveway in again. And when I got up in the morning and I was going to a meeting or something like that, I had to break the ice in my driveway. I have to get up 3 hours early to make sure I can get out of my driveway. And but look, it is what it is. But with that, we know that it is what it is, and there's a better way to do it. But again, in Fall River, we're just picking on them because they are. But let's get to the school department. There was a lawsuit, CJ. You want to talk about that lawsuit a little bit, and then we'll segue into another bombshell.
I would just love to. The school department, or the city of Fall River, has settled a lawsuit where they fired a Fall River teacher and they fired her for what they declared racist comments. Um, According to corporate counsel Alan Rumsey, he confirms that the teacher, Taryn Camara, has agreed to a $90,000 settlement for her breach of contract claims. He declined to discuss the lawsuit further. Camara's attorney, Mark Gagliardi, did not immediately return any requests for comments. According to the federal court documents, the case was headed to trial after mediation with the court failed and before the two sides reached an agreement. Camara was fired from her job as a special education teacher at Cuss Middle School in July of 2020 for conduct unbecoming a teacher. A month after, screenshots from her Facebook account were publicly circulated, catching attention and ire from former Superintendent Matthew Malone and the school committee. By the way, this is coming from Herald News and Joe Good. The posting by Camara came out during a period of protests and arrests in the country following the death of George Floyd at the hands of the Minneapolis police officer. Here was her comments. These are not our comments, these were hers. There is one supreme race and gender, and that is the white man. I also can't help but notice that race and gender were the ones leading most of the riots. Lastly, if you look at the stats, more black men have died from other black men than white men. So there lies two problems. But there are far more inequalities that will never change. That's what her post read. So they fired her for that. The Massachusetts Teachers Association and the Florida Educators Association refused to defend Camara in arbitration. In arbitration, she did win, and she was reinstated to her job with a year back pay, and this was a year back pay and 1 year of seniority retroactively. So again, another lawsuit. It costs us money because it always costs us money, and this is what happens.
Well, let me just weigh in on this one because Alan Runaway Rumsey in our law department, again, this city should have never had that lawsuit
No, they shouldn't have.
because as reprehensible as those comments are, we saw a recent Supreme Court decision that they ignored to throw us off out of BCC, that we have a right to the First Amendment,
That's right.
freedom of speech. And that teacher, whether you agree or disagree with her comments, she said that not in a school setting, but on her own Facebook page or whatever the hell it was. And she had a right to say that, whether you agree with it or not. And if you remember, and I'm not saying this like this is some kind of epiphany that I've had. You can go back years on our show, 13 years. You will see me say that, to me, one of the greatest examples of America and its freedom of speech was when the American Nazi Party was defended by the ACLU, by Jewish lawyers, and they defended their right to go out and say they should kill all the Jews, that they should, and say things, but you have a right to say it. If you do it, you're going to be prosecuted, obviously. But that was a First Amendment rights case. These people are stupid. They're virtue signalers. And who pays for their virtue signaling? We do, the taxpayer. We're picking up those lawsuits. And by the way, that she's no relation to me. The only Camaras that are related to me are my son and my daughter. Because I didn't have any brothers or sisters. I'm an only child. And my father had 3 sisters. And all their kids have his sister's married name. And he had one brother who had no children. So I have no Camaras that are relatives. Anybody named Camara outside of my son and my daughter and my granddaughter are not related to me. So I'm not related to Steve Camara, Joe Camara, this Camara, or any other Camara. Okay? So let's get that clear. But they have a First Amendment right. I just saw 2 TikTok videos of black people saying virtually the exact same thing about white people. That we should go to the back of the bus and everything else, and that's reprehensible too. There are black racists, there are white racists, there are yellow racists. There are even countries that have words that fundamentally actually say that these are other people, not one of us, which is fundamentally racist. I said, if you actually look at the Chinese language, there's a word called guai-lo, which means anybody that's not Chinese, and it's not used in a complimentary way. And the Japanese have a word called gaijin, which means anybody that isn't Japanese. So is that racist? To some people it is, to have a word to say that everybody else is not one of us. Is it exclusionary? I don't know. But this is the whole problem. You got to write the same thing you want in this country, but you don't if you're not a wokey. You see, you can go to jail for using the wrong pronoun. But this teacher got fired for having an opinion that differed from the wokies. And I'm not saying that her opinion is right, but she has a right to it. Just as the American Nazi Party was defended by the ACLU, and they actually won that case, and the American Nazi Party had a demonstration and spewed anti-Semitic narratives all over the place. But that's America. That's why this country was founded. For you bozos who don't study history anymore in college, you study critical race theory. The fact is that this country was created by people who were not able to speak freely in Europe. There was religious persecution, not prosecution, Paul, persecution. I'm using this correctly. And they were escaping Europe because there was rampant religious persecution. That's why America was founded. That's why our forefathers created that magnificent instrument called the Constitution. That's why the First Amendment of that Constitution gives us the right to say virtually anything. I say virtually because there are certain things you can't say in Constitution. You can't yell fire in a crowded room. You can't do something that will knowingly damage, somebody like, you'll cause a stampede and kill people. But without those extreme circumstances, you can say basically anything you want. You have a right in this country to be a misogynist, to be a misandrist, to be anything you want, to be an iconoclast, to be a misanthrope. You got a right. That's what makes this country great. And they want to take that away from us, these people. And we got lawyers that we're paying in this city that let these lawsuits happen because they just don't say a word. They just go, hey, screw it. We'll try to fire this person. And if they're not smart enough to hire a lawyer, well, we got away with it. But if they don't, the taxpayers are going to foot the bill. And that's exactly what's happened in all of these cases. And I find it hysterically ironic that Matt Malone would be outraged. Matt Malone, the guy who made all kinds of disparaging remarks to elderly people, to handicapped people, and to women. He's outraged? Oh, boy, ain't that a real wokey double standard. And with that, CJ, I'll turn it back to you.
We had a lot of things happen under the Malone administration, and that was that's a bad thing. But also remember, this also happened under Paul's administration. Okay, it happened under Paul's administration, as many other lawsuits have happened under Paul's administration, as many other issues have happened under Paul's administration, like John Perry. And people are still asking for the Perry report. We all want to know, where's the Perry report? We still haven't seen it. We want it. We want to know what's going on. Here's Mr. X saying the level of covering up that transpired was appalling. Yes, it is. But that happens throughout the city. And we just received information. And we're waiting for the documents because we cannot talk about it too much. But we just received information of a problem within the Fall River school system. And once we have the proof, the documents, the pictures, we will put them on the air and let people see them. We have a failing school system already, and we have a school system which is deceitful and disrespects our teachers and our children, and quite possibly putting them in danger. But this is what happens. You have to look at the picture in its entirety, not just in small bits and pieces. Because when you look at it in small bits and pieces alone, they don't seem like a lot. But when you stop putting them together and the puzzle comes together, all of a sudden, you've got some big, big issues. And we don't address them. We ignore them. We think, hey, whatever, it's not my problem. It's not bothering me any. Yeah, well, guess what? That's what was said about our show over at BCC. We weren't bothering anyone. And then all of a sudden, two politicians, who are still politicians, Laura, then Washington, now Sampson, and Mimi Larrabee, said that we were being disrespectful and spreading false rumors about them. You're corrupt. That's it. You're corrupt. We know you're corrupt. You're corrupt. Okay? You're corrupt because your votes can be bought by the administration, or because you're so far up the mayor's backside that you don't think for yourself. You think for what the mayor wants. And that's the sad part about it. You don't represent the mayor. You represent the people. And you people have forgotten that. And when you look at this administration, when he gets an answer of no, he throws a tantrum. He turns around and he says, fine, you want to give me no? I'm going to present it again. And he presents it again. And if he gets no again, then he starts replacing people. Replace people at the retirement board. He's replaced people at the housing authority. This is what happens. And at the housing authority, the person that was replaced was Steve Long. And Steve Long was elected chairman. So now the mayor has control of the housing authority. And soon he may get control of the retirement board, which means the retirees are going to get screwed every year when it comes time for your COLA. That's a cost of living adjustment. And that will happen. The mayor wants to take out $500,000 from the city's contribution to the retirement, just like they did under Ed Lambert. This way, we lose everything.
Well, we're going to give them a little tip about what we're going to break. It isn't the school department. It's about another cover-up in the school department. And it's about a maintenance cover-up. Now, we know we had mold in one school. It had to be mitigated, and it was pretty serious. And people were complaining about why it hadn't been addressed until it got to a real critical stage. Well, it seems as though this cover-up extended far beyond that particular school. We have had some reports that allegedly there was mold in other schools, and there are pictures that prove that it not only was known about and not addressed, but it was covered up, literally and figuratively. So stay tuned, because again, we will deal with facts. We will show you pictures, and we will tell you where these pictures came from, and let the people who covered it up. Let's see if the school committee who covered for Malone will cover for the individual who was responsible for not addressing this issue. And with that, CJ, I'll turn.
This comes back to building maintenance. This comes back to building maintenance. The city is so good at maintaining its buildings. So once again, this comes back to building maintenance. Just like when they were building Durfee, they didn't even have the roof on the building, and they were already putting the walls up inside, and it was raining on the walls. That's where mold comes from. And they said, oh, well, we took it all down and we redid it all. Yeah, so you increased the cost. Did we pay for that? I don't know. I don't know what we're paying for, because the mayor refuses to allow the assessor's office to put on the bill the debt exclusion, how much we're paying, so he can fudge those numbers. Because we don't know how much we're paying. We don't know how much the city's paying. We have no idea. No idea. I remember when they came around and touted this debt exclusion, that after 8 years, the city would be able to afford to pay it in its entirety. Are we going to get there? I don't think so. I have every doubt in the world. I have very serious doubts that we're going to ever get to the point where we, the people, are going to know how much that building costs us, how much we're paying, and how much the city's screwing us. Because that's what happens. That's what happens. We're already seeing it with our tax bills. Everyone's upset. And those tax bills are getting to be ridiculous. And we don't know where the debt exclusion is, because we have no idea how much it is. And now they want to create special municipal fees to attach to your tax bill for fines that they're going to address, that they want to give you, because they know the court won't uphold them. So this way it's a special municipal fee, and they will in turn deny you your rights. You won't have the right to redress. You won't have the right to protect yourself. You won't have the right to appeal it. That's what it is. And this is what happens. When you don't pay attention and you don't do what needs to be done, you end up paying for it. And that's the sad part about it.
Well, you're right, CJ. There has never been accountability, and this administration has the least accountability I have ever seen. And it's almost that we do everything in reverse. There's the right way and the Fall River way. And like I said, the citizens, unfortunately, have been not getting to the polls. And I think that now, with all these bills and all the problems we have, I think hopefully in the next election we're going to see a tidal wave of people getting to the polls. And let's hope so, because that's the only way we change things. And again, we will always bring you the facts. And if it's our opinion, it's our opinion, just as you're entitled to yours, even if it is wrong.
Well, I want to thank you for watching. Have a happy Valentine's Day. Be very careful on the roads. And remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. Thanks for visiting, and we'll see you on Friday.